Growing up, my siblings, friends, and I would measure a video game's worth by how fun it was. Fun was a nebulous concept, but even back then, we didn't really have the language to talk about video games analytically, nor the function they served in our lives. The closest facsimile were toys, and toys were unambiguously meant to be fun, so that's how we articulated the value of a game. Now, as an adult, I can recognize that to have fun is not always the reason I play video games. In fact, it's probably one of the least common reasons at this point. Games offer us a variety of different experiences, and it's hard to describe the process of playing through a game like Silent Hill 2, something miserable and slow like that, as fun. But that didn't stop it from being a critically acclaimed high-profile success. Critics and other academic types have been aware for decades now that not all video games need to be fun to be valuable or worthy of our time. That much is established by this point. But despite this, I would argue that the overwhelming majority of video game criticism has largely failed to move on from that mindset that my friends and I shared as kids. Even with the critical acclaim games like Silent Hill 2 receive, it would appear that instead of using them as an example to reframe the way we think about video game criticism, critics have merely replaced the word fun with something like engaging or entertaining or compelling. You just get the sense that regardless of the adjective used, fundamentally, most game critics are still reviewing games as if they were toys. Now, I'm not saying that toys aren't art. Designing a toy to be fun and engaging is an artistic discipline to be sure, but video games as a medium are capable of being far more ambitious than just that. So there's something that feels very limiting about this mindset that I see in most video game criticism. For a long time, I was stumped trying to articulate exactly what it was that video game critics were focusing on in their reviews that felt so wrong to me, but somebody else did it for me. Behavioral scientist Scott Rigby has a presentation called The Freedom Fallacy, which he gave at the Game Developers Conference in 2017. And in it, he identifies this phenomenon exactly. Getting players to enjoy your game has nothing to do with fun or immersion or any other countless buzzwords. Getting players to enjoy your game is about inspiring within them volition. This meaning that the player wants to do the thing that your game allows them to do. And so we can see that the fundamental question being answered in all of these misguided game reviews is, does this game successfully make me want to do the things that it allows me to do? I think it's pretty easy to see that that is exactly what video game critics have been focusing on this entire time. What bothers me about this is that despite the way we as gamers campaign to have our favorite medium be taken seriously as an art form, all of us are still analyzing video games as toys. To be art is to be meaningful, and no one is disputing that games have meaning, but when we analyze and critique our own favorite medium, we barely talk about meaning, and video game design has followed this trend. Within the industry, best practices and common sense around video game design is not about how to use the tools video games offer us to create meaningful thematic statements, or even about how to best communicate those statements to the player. Instead, video game design is about how to patronize the player. We, the player, are God in video game design, and while developers continue to design to appease us, we continue to reserve our praise for them until they successfully do so. This, I would argue, is an artistically bankrupt way to push our favorite medium forward. And I would encourage gamers and critics alike, any among us who view this medium as an art form, to stop valuing games on their ability to patronize our agency fulfillment fantasies. Instead, take a thematic approach to playing video games. Look first at games as an artistic statement, regardless of their ability to achieve within us volition. A consequence of all of this is that you don't actually have to have even played a game to enjoy or dislike it. I argued against that idea for years, but I've had to accept the reality that meaning can be read from a game without personal experience. We interpret meaning from gameplay by looking at how the game itself responds to the input of the player, which makes the mechanics of the game the politics of that game statement. This is something that can be meaningfully interpreted regardless of whether it is you or someone else playing the game. For an example of a thematic approach to video game criticism, I would recommend the work of Noah Caldwell-Gervais here on YouTube, whose work is outstanding in this regard. And while you're at it, maybe subscribe to this channel, because I may just have to roll up my sleeves and post a review on here myself sometime. Thank you for watching.